Hello and welcome to ETCIO BFSI Digital Conclave. And this session is about automating the BFSI in the new normal world. And we have the speakers from across BFSI sectors. And let me introduce them to you. My first speaker is Mr. Mohit Dhingra, the CTO, Global Business Service Bank of America. Mr. Dhingra, welcome to the discussion.
Thank you, Amol. Thank you for having me, and looking forward to the discussion with other panelists with me. Thank you.
Great, Mr. Dhingra. My next panelist is Mr. Zuzar Tinawala, the COO, India and South Asia Standard Chartered Bank. Mr. Tinawala, welcome to the discussion.
Amol, thanks for inviting me. Looking forward to having a very interesting discussion with my co-panelist.
Yes, we will try our best to make an interesting discussion, Mr. Chinawala. My next panelist is Mr. Nitin Agrawal, the President and Group CIO, Edelweiss Group. Mr. Agrawal, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you, Amol, and nice to meet everybody. Looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Agrawal. My next speaker is Mr. Saurabh Chatterjee, the President and Head IT, Web Services and Travel, Bajaj Allianz General Insurance Company. Mr. Chatterjee, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Amol, and hello to everyone, and look forward to an engaging discussion.
Superb. My next speaker is Mr. Ashok Kumar, GP Ashok Kumar, the CTO of the Karur Vaishya Bank. Mr. Kumar, glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation. We are all going to have some interesting sessions now.
Yes, thank you. My next speaker is Mr. Akash Desai, the Regional Head Solutions Consulting Service now. Mr. Desai, welcome to this discussion.
Hey, thanks, Amol, and good afternoon to you, and good afternoon to all the fellow panelists. Looking forward for this discussion. Thank you.
My next speaker is Mr. Karsi Tawadia, CIO, BSE Limited. Mr. Tawadia, glad to have you here. Thank you, gentlemen. My last speaker is Mr. Chintan Patnaik, the Sales Engineer to Fiend. Mr. Patnaik, welcome to this show. And I'm really glad to have all of you here, gentlemen. And I have some common questions and some specific questions. But to begin with, Mr. Tinawala, I will come to you first. You're representing Standard Chartered Bank. And my basic question for all of you to start with you is, and if you could give what you can say, your perspective here for this common question is, what is the biggest benefit that the BFSI companies will have or having, if they go for automation? So, Mr. Chinawala, your answer from the bank's perspective.
Thanks, Amol, for that question. And from the bank's perspective, I've worked in the banking industry now for the last 30 to 33 years. And I was generally of the view that, operation intensive operation and technology, you need a lot of people coming, have to continuously do some work, handle papers, everything. Come the pandemic last year, we didn't have any, no guidance given. It just hit us out of the blue, and Modi ji announced the, lockdown in mid of March, just without any further notice. So all of us were taken by surprise. But our human race has got so much of resilience that within 1 week of struggling, we all found out innovative ways of doing a lot of things, including banking and including financial transactions. The best benefit or the advantage we've seen of this pandemic coming out is we've seen a huge shift of people moving from physical transacting or physical day-to-day dealings to digital. You would have seen, we buying vegetables, we buying material online, paying digitally, getting delivered digitally, all maintaining social distancing. And same is true for banking.
Right.
We've seen a huge surge in the digital uptake of transactions, and the footfall in branches is now something we're surprised when somebody actually walks in to branch to do a transaction. So that's been a very drastic and a positive change in the right direction, and it's also helping us to achieve the aim of Digital India in a big way. So that's my take on the whole thing. I think and currently, if we see, our corporate payments are already at 99.6% of digitally initiated transactions. So that's the stage of digital initiation what we've achieved so far.
Okay. Interesting, Mr. Tinawala, and thanks for that note. I will move to Mr. Agrawal now. And Mr. Agrawal, I would like to have your views on, the same question, which is about automation. What is the benefit that the BFSI companies can gain out of automation?
Yeah, I think it's a usual benefit. I mean, you need to, process your transaction faster. You need to have a first-time right solution. Customer expectations are changing, and so on and so forth. However, just for the discussion, I also want to recognize that while automation is important in financial services and any other services, I think there's also a larger ecosystem play to actually reimagine how would you do business, right? I mean, you could automate a check processing scenario to whatever extent that you wanted forever, and you would never have achieved the speed of UPI transaction, right? So
Right.
automation will only go so far in a customer journey or innovation. I think there's also a lot of reimagination of fundamentally how the services are provided, what are the customer expectations. So I think you need to put customer the first, build the services around it, and that's where you'll find the usage of automation. And that's what industry is going through. I would say it's a huge transformation which will lead to not only automation but also reimagination of processes and services.
Thank you, Mr. Agrawal. Mr. Kumar, I will come to you. Your perspective.
Automation, actually, to say it as people were able to handle huge volumes of businesses. The services are available on a 24/7 basis. There is a huge cost reduction for the organization. That is the main purpose of automation. The sub advantages of automation is that there is a reduction in your transaction cost, which is being passed on to the customers. And as rightly told by Mr. Tinawala, we can see a paradigm shift in the user behavior of doing the transactions on a 24/7. People started adopting, and I can say a bank of old private sector banks of us, there is more than 35% increase in the alternate channels transaction during this pandemic. So you can imagine what is the adaptability of the customers. We always say customers are not doing it. There is adaptability of the customer. There is need for the customers. So when all of us actually, this is one area where banking is a service is where it was offered on a 24/7 basis right from the day one of pandemic till date, and it will continue to do so. This would not have been possible without automation. So automation has played a greater role in ensuring uninterrupted services to the customer.
I just want to kind of highlight there for the discussion. I'm not sure net banking is any more an alternate channel. I thought the branch has become an alternate channel now.
I agree. I agree.
Mr. Chatterjee, I will come to you.
Amol, see, for us, it was again a very simple thing. I agree with what Nitin and Ashok has said in terms of automation is equal to transformation. See, it was right at the center of our strategy. What I mean by that is 2 weeks before COVID, we actually did a drill which tried to simulate the entire scenario. And at that point, some of my self-service percentages, right, for our 72 million customers was like around 38, 39%. And guess what? All the capabilities that over the years we had put in, suddenly, that shot up to around 80, 85%. And self-service and insurance, when we say that it's a push product, we suddenly saw that being a pull product in spite of the channel that you are selling it from. So for us, automation was at the heart of, not just COVID response, but even part of our business strategy in terms of how we look at transformation. I'll give you another example. See, the world has come to a point wherein automation is not just about reducing cost. It is also a dial-in, dial-out method. By that I mean is, not just the customers are asking for more, but also in our case, there was a lot of insurance which was getting sold, like let's say Corona insurance, right? It was a small ticket Corona insurance which got sold in lakhs of policies, within days. And for this, we needed to have a way to be able to respond, not just on the product side, but even on the tech side. And this is what I mean by dial in, dial out. Automation helped us, increase kind of the variable cost model, go into a variable cost model, put in our resources, time, effort on the areas that we actually wanted to do. And e-commerce became a very big distribution channel for us on the insurance side. So as I mentioned, automation, not just about scale and not just about cost, not just about a consumer preference, but it's at the heart of our business strategy going forward.
Amol, if I may just chip in, currently, I would say banking is at a Kodak moment.
Okay.
So this is exactly what happened. It's now, talking about advantages of digitization and automation. We don't have an option.
Right.
We don't have an option. Either we go for it or we are non-existent, because there are players, they're young, they're digital firms, There are new startups which are coming, which are offering the same kind of services, be it insurance, be it banking, be it others at, just a click of a button. So it's
True.
basically what we call Uberization of our whole civilization. It's everything today. It's required at the tip of the button, whether it be a mobile or it be an iPad. We initially moved to iBanking, which was accessed through web. Now
Right.
it's all mobile banking. So I don't know next it'll be what. So
Yes.
it's not a matter of choice. We have to go that way.
True, obviously. And I will come to you, Mr. Dhingra, now. You also heard the other panelists talking from private banks, the PSU bank, the private bank, the global bank, the insurance bank, now, insurance companies. Mr. Dhingra, your view now.
Sure. So if you look at automation,
Hmm.
right, I think it's not only BFSI, if it's impacted all the
Right.
industries, right? And if you really look at what has happened in the last 9 to 10 months, we've just leapfrogged digitization by 3 to 5 years.
Right.
What we would have achieved 3 to 5 years from now. And the only reason is because the consumers' behavior and consumers have gotten comfortable. And of course, there was no choice, but the quick adaptation to becoming comfortable with the digital transaction is really what has helped leapfrog it, right? And as the co-panelists have already mentioned, there are multiple benefits. I'll just give you a simple example, right? And before COVID, I was a big cash spender, as in, I would not use my cards, use cash. More from a ease of transaction perspective. It was speed of transaction was very fast, right? You give $100, you get something out, you move on, right? In the last year, I would say I have not even used cash for more than 5 times. Now, if I go to a coconut water vendor, the lady looks at me and says, "What? You're giving me cash, right? What do you mean by that, right?" All my transactions have become hybrid, where I have to do majority of my transaction through Google Pay, and the rest $20 or $30 has to come through, cash, or it has to come through the Google Pay. So I think that has changed a lot for all of us, and that has helped a lot leapfrog it. And I think that requires us to have the speed behind it. So I think one big thing is the whole, employee experience has also changed, which we do not talk about a lot, right? While you look at the customer experience, the employees are able to now do more with automation being there, which was not there earlier.
Right.
Which creates a big, cost has reduced. I think the reduction in errors has happened. So all of that has benefited a lot from an ecosystem perspective.
I think that's a very valid point, Mr. Dhingra, on the employees' engagement and how they are using automation aggressively. Let's drill down that a bit later. Let me finish the first round of questions, and I will come to you, Mr. Desai. What is your quick view on the benefits that the BFSI companies can have out of automation?
I would say, I think the panelists, the esteemed panelists, they have already called out the most of the benefits that are available because of automation. And I would also extend it to digitalization. Now, for the first time, I can see the BFSI industry, and not only BFSI, digitalization, when you do it across industries, the first thing that it provides you is visibility.
Mm-hmm.
The access to information, which earlier was not available with manual processes.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you have everything on a digital platform, you have the visibility of everything that you do. And that goes a long way in terms of monitoring risks and compliance today, which is all done manually and it's all reviewed manually. So it eliminates that effort completely when you have all of that data captured in the system. So in addition to what the panelists mentioned, I think this is one of the biggest advantage that digitalization provides, and automation, of course, speed, cost efficiency, all those things are given. And especially when we are talking about 24/7, I would say functioning, automation and digitalization is fundamental. As Mr. Teenwala said, it's not an option anymore. It's fundamental. It has to be there. And I completely agree with you when you say it's the Kodak moment for the FSI industry. So that's my view on that.
Okay, noted, Mr. Desai. And so, Mr. Patnaik, I will come to you and would like to have your view as well, specifically on the benefits of the BFSI companies if they go for automation.
Yeah, so that is a very valid question, and that is what we are also having a discussion with a lot of customers, like what essentially automation brings on the table. So there are quite a few which I think it over. One thing is like it brings in, it essentially increase the business agility with the security, because it helps you to bring kind of a balance between the security and the business agility. It also helps you to meet your business SLAs, right? Your business needs to more and more agile in order to bring the application or your services to the market, so that you can bring back revenue to your own organization. So it helps you to meet those SLAs by implementing those changes which is relevant for your business from the context of business, so which can be implemented in a matter of minutes rather than taking days. And on top of it, it also increases the efficiency and the accuracy, because not only you're doing or adhering to a process and doing those changes for your business application, but you have to also make sure that those are risk free and error free, and also there are least chances of doing the redo and the other processes. And in the BFSI companies that we also talk to, the most important part is how do we manage those compliances, right? Compliances could be a very difficult thing to manage, and when your network is growing, right? When your network is growing, it itself becomes a daunting task to manage those at scale, right? So with automation, it helps you to not only manage the compliances, but be also an audit ready, and you not only just looking good in front of auditor, but you're essentially doing understanding what is your security state with the help of automation. Because let's face it, adhering to the manual processes will not yield right amount of benefit, and you won't be able to uncover or fix things on a rapid rate. For example, we had a customers, they since I'm a part of Stufan, so we have many customers whom which we have helped with our solution to do those audit changes, and they just simply log into that and get those reports in a matter of few minutes. So it automates this process because you have the audit ready reports available, and that essentially helps you to to get up to the speed and doing things more rapidly, making sure that security is part of it, at not slowing down your processes, and also making sure your business is also pretty much agile.
Okay. So, Mr. Tavadia, thanks again, for having, I mean, we are glad to have you here. We have already seen, and, you already heard, few of the panelists specifically talking about the benefits of BFSI. Let me ask some specific questions, and I will start with you. Exchanges, in fact, the stock market is, which is the crucial part of the financial services, has been really aggressive in using technology, and they have been doing it since ages. Now, if I ask you specifically what is left at BSE, or what is left at the stock exchanges, because most of the things are already there, you guys are also aggressively going ahead with T+2 to whether it can be automated and immediate. So tell us something about that.
I would still say still a lot is to be done. Like now for you, I mean, that's how I look at it. Like it's a journey. Basically, automation is, I would say, it's a path that you get onto. We got onto that path maybe a few years ago, and the only thing is what we also achieved, like other panelists have said, the speed and usability became more visible. It was there, but it was not visible. Let me put it there. It was there as a like, okay, it is also there. Now it is only there. Like, no, it's the whole thing has got reversed. So the way I would put it is like how the automation has helped is, like, for example, if you consider an exchange environment, when you want to start an exchange in the morning, so it has to start at X particular second. Like, but before that, there's so many checks, balances. Like if you go and sit in an aircraft, though everything is automated in aircraft, but you still have a pilot who takes out his diary. If you ever seen it, cockpit, he still takes out his diary, which is manual, and he ticks it and checks it. So ideally, it is the system that, but it's still a double checking thing. Now in our industry also, we have reached something like that, that the systems does this autopilot testing of everything, but still the manual guys, the operations guys who comes and sees whether this machine has done it right, what is supposed to do it, and it does sample test check. So we have reached that kind of an automation. So that is as far as execution work is concerned, executing the jobs that are there. We are also doing automation, like an AI types of thing in case of DR scenario, disaster recovery scenario, BCP type of thing. Now, it is very easy to start and stop an application, but when you're saying you shut down a data center and start another data center and bring up the entire ecosystem in say half an hour or 45 minutes or 2 hours, like this is where the biggest challenge is right now, because that is, I think, the automation, that the kind of work we have done over the years is, I would say it is remarkable, because we have done these drills, and to be fair, like world over, India is the only country where it was mandated by the exchange to mandatorily run an automated undeclared DR for twice in a year.
Okay.
And okay, like many countries, it is there that it's a checklist. Like, do you have a DR? People have a checklist and run some test checks. Here we are actually running operations. We did this in the last week of December also. Prior to that, we did it just after COVID. In fact, during COVID also we did mocks. All this was possible only because it was fully automated, and because it was COVID, and it was like one more use case for us. Like, when you do a BCP type of a drill, you have certain use cases that people will be there, sites will be there, or alternate site will be there. Here, people only were not available. So people cannot move out of the house. Like up to now, in all the BCP scenarios, the use cases that people have, they have either a machine will fail or one particular site will fail. It was never assumed that all 100% of the staff will not be available for you to run.
No,
Now,
true.
in
I
this,
think.
okay, now this was a use case, and because we had already an infrastructure in place, we had a processes in place. For us, this became one more use case, and we were able to adopt it very, very soon. Like immediately, within a couple of days, we are up and running without any people, and the exchanges are running completely remotely, even till today. Like the people who are going to office are barely hands and feet to run the physical work where it is required.
True, I think valid points, Mr. Tawadian, and I think everybody has also realized the fact that if the banks would not have, or specifically the BFSI companies would not have gone aggressive specifically in digitalization 5 years back, we could not have dealt with the pandemic. I mean, that's a valid learning that all of us have. I have some specific questions for all of you, and Mr. Tinawala, I will come to you to start with. How do you, since you're talking about automation and understood the benefits that everybody wants of automation, my specific question to you is, how do you decide which part of business or vertical should shift to automation at your bank?
See, yeah, first, in our bank, we have this client first, approach. So we look at those areas which will have a very positive impact on the client, and we identify them for automation. The second factor or the consideration which we do is the nature of the process currently, how easily automable it is, what is the data input that goes out and what is the data output that we get. Is it standard? Is there any variant? Is there any decision making involved? Because everything is not just inputted and the machine gives an output. There are a lot of human decisioning that takes place in the interim process. It could be risk related, it could be money laundering, it could be other stuff. So there are certain alerts that you get, and machines we do have AI capabilities, but it's a developing tool, so it'll take some time for it to develop. So the easiest process we look, for example, the process which I would just look at, we've already done that, is payments. We have set of fields here, the customer inputs, we get it, it automatically zero touch process goes out to either through any of the existing mode, that is RTGS, NEFT, UPI, IMPS, zero touch process. It all happens in matter of seconds. If imagine the same payment was initiated by a client on a paper, you go ahead, verify the signature. If it's fax, again, you do a call back, verified. Instead of 45 seconds, it takes about half an hour to 45 minutes to process the same transaction. So that's the kind of upside we see, and easily doable. And another interesting case study which I would give is what we've done, and I'm sure a lot of other banking players and other PFI players have done, is the video KYC. The whole thing about account opening. Earlier, the clients used to walk to the branches, fill up 4 or 5 pages of forms and give all the underlying documents. Then as a part of doorstep banking, people used to go to visit clients and collect all of them. Now our clients can sit in the comfort of their homes and open the account. And there is always a regulatory verification, face-to-face verification required. That also we were overcome by using the video KYC feature where the regulator is allowed. So in end-to-end, or just in 30 minutes, we can get an account open with all the regulatory requirements done. And it's all these are extremely important, where we have a zero-touch process and we don't need to walk into a branch or have face-to-face interaction. It's worked very well for us. So these are a few criteria we see: client impact, the amount of cost save we would have, the kind of effort it would save, and the complexity of the process overall.
Right, Mr. Tinawala. Mr. Agrawal, you are, representing many companies, bigger group companies, CIO there. What is the benefit that you see of automation when you work with the group companies? Because, there might be a lot of transactions, there might be a lot of, integrities or nitty-gritties that you might be shifting from here and there. So how do you see the benefit of automation there, specifically in the, group companies?
Yeah, nothing different. I think, Edelweiss, though, operates as a group company. Just because we are not a bank, I think as a bank provides all the services as we do as a part of various group companies. One thing I would like to mention, as a group company, and because we are differently regulated, one of the approaches on automation that we've taken is around building a huge level of what we call as a platform architecture. So what we did is we converted a lot of our technology platforms into product services. So we actually established like a SaaS company within Edelweiss organization, and a lot of our whether it is a business process management or data platform or a API gateway are offered as SaaS platforms across various companies. So our various companies, though differently regulated, are able to make use of a lot of underlying platforms with respect to data, AI, automation, our low code platform, our microservices architecture. And that's how we are able to, leverage what we do in one part of the group into another part of the group. So that's one of the things that we've done, which has been very helpful in the COVID times.
Okay. Mr. Kumar, whenever we talk about the technologies or the digitization, the cultural shift or the cultural challenge is the biggest issue everybody talks about. And that issue is, more with the traditional banks or maybe government banks than the private or new age banks. So, how at your bank, being a traditional bank, being an old bank, are you dealing with the cultural challenges when you go for automation?
Here I'll go back to the early days of computerization, which started around mid 80s. The first area of operations computerized in all the banks were interbranch reconciliation statement.
Right.
From there onwards, banks have started doing the advanced ledger posting machine, where the computer used to replace the particular counter. Say you are having some 2,000 accounts operated in one counter, that has been replaced through a machine. Actually, to say, unions were very clever in the earlier days. The settlements were made in such a manner, it was all advantageous to them. From the ALPM's age, then we have moved to the total branch automation, where the number of branches are decided by the union, and there was an all India settlement between the All India Employees and All India Office Association with the Indian Banks Association. So this challenge continued till 90s, mid 90s. Okay. When the new age banks came into existence, then people started feeling the heat, because some of the new age banks also started with TBA, but they have quickly moved to the total branch automation, centralized core banking operations. Then these banks started feeling the heat, that people have started losing the business to the new gen banks. Then people realized, or the old private sector banks and public sector banks really realized, that if we have to survive, the only way is automation and the computerization. So slowly banks moved from ALPM to TBA to core banking operations. Maybe in the late 90s or early 2000, people almost all banks have initiated the journey. Around 2007 or 8 or maybe up to 2010, all the public sector banks and old private sector banks have been fully moved to core banking. After core banking, and then people started talking about ATMs, internet banking, mobile banking, UPI and all followed. But there were a lot, because I handled the manual banking for 8 years. From there, I'm the first guy to move from manual branch banking to the computer department. I started the computer department. I know what are the pains I had to undergo to make the people understand the importance of computerization. People at that time don't appreciate when I enter into a branch, seniors will walk out from the other door, because they know when I'm coming to a branch, computer is going to come to that branch. So those are all the challenges which we handled. In one of the fantastic use case, what I can share with this panel is that I had to depute one officer from Pune to Bombay just to switch on the UPS, because they say the computer is not working. They did not see that the UPS power is not switched on. So these are all big challenges which I handled for nearly 10, 15 years. But afterwards, then I can say now for the last 10, 15 years, the younger generation knows more computer, and they have more knowledgeable and more exposed than all of us. I think this age of actually all banks have come off that difficult phase. Now, no computer means nobody. I doubt anybody in the banking can handle anything manually. That cannot be possible. That is not possible. So a long way we have come across, and it is all a success story for all banks, I can say.
No, I think it's a very, very interesting, in fact, insights, and a great example that whenever you go to a branch, the people used to feel that, okay, the computer is going to come, because the ringmaster is here or a computer master is here. Oh, good one, Mr. Kumar.
And especially, I should not say, with branches from Kerala and West Bengal, I had a very tough time in implementing computers at those days.
Okay. Great.
You must be aware of the reasons, obvious reasons.
Yes. Obviously.
No shouting. No shouting. I mean, everybody wants only computer.
True, Mr. Kumar. Thanks. And let me move to a dedicated insurance company. Mr. Chatterjee, your views specifically, we spoke about the automation. But again, like I asked Mr. Karsee Tewadia also that, many part of the digitalization has already happened, in the bank, insurance, stock exchanges. And in insurance also, the policies are issued quickly. The claims are also dispersed, not quickly, but, in a far more meaningful manner earlier to what it was used to happen earlier. So can be automated going ahead? Can underwriting or core areas like regulatory compliance be also automated?
No, absolutely. See, when we look at, just to add to what Mr. Tinwala was saying, right, our framework, we have come up with a framework for automation. And this is almost like, I would love to say it's perfect, but obviously, it's always a work in progress. But what we look at is 3 parameters. One, we look at the value chain, insurance value chain. Look at the front end, middle office, front office, back office, so as to say, right? When you say front office, obviously it's customer focused. Middle office is anything remaining of paper, because most of the issuance and endorsements and renewals are already automated. But anything that comes from that, or corporate policies that come in engineering, marine, large policies, those kind of, or back office. We also look at it from which stakeholder you're impacted, right? Customer, whether it's our intermediary or whether it's our employee. And there is a third way. In each one of these, we look at some benefits. Now, the benefit could be a savings, it could be a revenue benefit, it could be simply control and compliance, or it could be from a customer satisfaction of any of these stakeholders, right? Now, if you look at that, I think the front end was the easy part. And it has been done and dusted with. Today, as we say, it's not a choice anymore, right? The middle office also, to an extent, is there. But the biggest parts for us are the underwriting, as you mentioned, right? And we have the underwriting and claims. And we have done very successful scaled up experiments on claims. For example, one of the experiments that we worked with an Israeli startup was on a deep learning algorithm where we looked at millions of images. If you get into an accident and you take the pictures of the car and then you can automatically submit, my machine will go through millions of those images and then figure out the right kind of damage and offer a settlement right then and there. You can take it, or you can go to a cashless garage and get it sorted out, but you can actually take the money and it gets deposited in your bank. Now, to do that, the tech was the simple part, right? Though I'm making sure my claims adjusters and my underwriters agree to that the machine is taking the right decision, is a change management and an experience in itself. But guess what? Over a period of time, we started with it small, and then we gave them the choice of refusal. While the machine is giving a decision, you still have the power to override it, and we've been able to do that successfully. Similarly, on the underwriting process, a lot of things that in insurance, the biggest thing in the insurance industry today is that while the insurance industry is bleeding in terms of paying claims, except probably Bajaj Allianz General Insurance and one other company, no one actually makes any underwriting profit in the industry out of 32 companies for last 20 years. But the normal sentiment on the street is that insurance companies, actual customer, regular customer, they don't pay claims, right? Therefore, fraud is a very interesting element for us. And fraud cannot be after the fact. Fraud has to be right upfront. You have to capture, those elements, those data points, which enable us to identify that pool. To be able to say that these are most likely, right, and get into that bucket where a second pair of eyes can look at it. I think that's one element where we have developed very interesting models, fraud propensity models for various consumer segments using a bunch of data, whether it's internal or external. And while it's still work in progress, I think that's another area. I would say the last interesting area that you're working on is the entire RegTech. You know, these all sort of words, you know, keep floating around, right? I'm not a very big fan of all the buzzwords, but like InsurTech, you know, there's RegTech, right? Regulatory technology. I think the entire compliance piece is we are taking a fresh lens now, and in terms of looking at those processes and saying what all can be automated within that, because there's a large element of that 70-80%, which is repeat task, or there are learnings where a feedback loop can give us, you know, proper models to be able to go ahead in those. So I would say these are the emerging areas beyond, you know, what we see or what we hear.
Right, Mr. Chatterjee, thank you for that note. Yes, and the RegTech. And I could see, you know, maybe in India, we are not using that word very aggressively, but I think in globally that word has been, you know, adopted very significantly. And even the regulators like Monetary Authority of Singapore have also come with some RegTech policies, even in Australia, I think, which are quite helpful.
Even our regulators, you know, RBI is talking about, of course, you know, there's still ways to go. IID is also talking about it, but I think that it starts with the insurance or the banking companies on their own. I'm sure we are using a lot of internally also, there's a lot of automation. We'll move in that direction.
Absolutely. Mr. Dhingra, let me get some global perspective from you. Obviously, we are going, you know, aggressive on automation part, but since you are connected with the global bank, could you just tell us, you know, how are banks globally going for or adopting automation?
No, so what you would see is it is no different than what you would see in India today, right? The adoption rate has been tremendous. The digital sales have gone up. The amount of online transactions were already up, and they just multiplied multiple folds as part of the COVID and the pandemic situation, right? So I would say it's no different than you would see this crisis has, you know, impacted all industries and all countries equally, right? And I think the good part is that the bank has still maintained what we call is the high tech and the high touch approach to it. Now, what happens is that the customer behaviors are different. There will be always a customer grouping that is very comfortable with the high tech, right? Does not want to come into the branch, does not want to come and do any transaction. Everything is online. There'll always be a customer segment that is high touch, that requires that, you know, glove service or a customized service that they're looking for. And I think what has been successful for us globally has that we've been able to balance the high tech and the high touch very well. And I know it's very different than what we're discussing here, but it is, you know, putting the customer in the center of what we are trying to do. We have to cater to all the needs that the customers would have. But at the same time, if you take a senior citizen, might not be able to walk into the branch, right, because of the pandemic. But the good part is they have moved to digital, right? True. They could have been high touch customers in the past. So the balance between high touch and high tech would be an important differentiator for us, that we've been able to successfully balance it out. And that has worked as a very good strategy for us.
Okay, noted, Mr. Dhingra, and let me get some tech perspective here. You know, I have with me Mr. Desai from ServiceNow. Mr. Desai, you know, workflows management and many other things specifically on the digitalization part are very, very important. So if I ask you the question, you know, how are BFSI companies managing their workflows now? And what is the benefit if they go for advanced digitalization in order to achieve the complete automation?
So, Amol, my view here is, firstly, banking or BFSI is a highly evolved domain that we have today. And it has highly evolved processes. It's been around for decades and decades. So from the process perspective, it's highly evolved. You know, what is lacking today is, you know, most of these processes today are still manually executed. And I think on this particular forum, we have spoken enough about automation. And I think everybody's clear about the requirement of automation. But having said that, it is just not enough to automate. Today you have front office functions, you have mid office functions, and you have back office functions. And most of them are on some siloed tools and siloed disparate systems, and they don't talk to each other. Now, how can I bind this together and have a one team, my front office, middle office, and back office as one team, so the organization has visibility across all the processes and functions and can leverage data across different functions. So today, I say that many banks that is lacking, and banks are now approaching us to have a single platform where they can bring all this middle office, back office, and front office workflows on a common platform. And that is what they are seeing it as a true digital workplace or true digital transformation. So all the organizations, as I said, they have very evolved technologies, but pretty much siloed, not connected with each other. So I think the biggest benefit that the banks will or BFSI industry will achieve by having digitalization would be visibility across the functions, then continuous monitoring of risk and compliance, and providing a consumer grade employee experience, not only customer experience, but an employee experience. I think those will be the advantages of the digitalization.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Desai, for that note. And so again, now, I would like to come to you, Mr. Patnaik, and take your view specifically on an important topic, which is security. So, if you could tell us, the biggest challenge in the digital adoption of the security, what goes wrong with the BFSI companies while managing the risks in the multi-layered digital environment?
Let's face it, automation requires a different set of approaches. And typically those approaches are not the traditional approach that we see today. It is a policy-based approach, right? Or a policy-based automation approach. And in order to reach to that automation stage, there has to be a lot of significant amount of effort that has to be put in order to reach to that stage and then move on to the automation. So a lot of time, what we have also realized that there's always, there is a need of a consensus and an agreement on having a unified security policy management across your complex hybrid heterogeneous environment, right? And that could be a challenging, and it also consumes a lot of time. So, adoption to a new concept or a mechanism is a paradigm shift altogether. And this essentially takes or could be a kind of a challenge, which essentially could pose a roadblocker sometimes in the stages, in the phases of automations also. And on top of that, just to add one more thing, that it also requires a significant amount of collaboration among your different teams. So for example, in a typical IT environment, you have different business units, different teams like networks, security, cloud, and and DevOps. There could be many other teams, right, who are rapidly building application or who are doing things for your business applications, right? And so they have the different sets of roles and responsibility, and bringing them all together could be could take a significant amount of effort, right? And because their KPIs do not match with the other team's KPIs, so you need to define the collaboration and essentially help you with so this is typically the challenges with what we see essentially on the conceptual part. Yeah.
Noted that, Mr. Patnaik. I will come back to Mr. Tawadia, and let's talk about some collaborations. Like banks are collaborating with fintechs, insurance companies are collaborating with insurtechs. What kind of collaborations do you see with the tech companies going ahead in terms of achieving the highest level of automation? Like we said, it's not over yet. There are so many things that are pending, and we are working on so many things. So I'm sure you will work with the ecosystem to achieve the next goal. So could you just quickly tell us what kind of collaborations will you have?
To start off with, BSA itself works with our own zone startup. It's a incubator where we are encouraging a lot of startup companies who can come and work. Okay, so we are also trying to. So it is nothing that they can work only with the exchange. We are giving ideas for automation to people, whatever they can automate, or they come out with their kind of work over there. So that is one area where we are working out. Now we are also working with our own regulator, SEBI. Okay, and where we have created an innovation sandbox. It's a portal, where innovationsandbox.in, where anybody who wants to innovate something, wants to try out an idea or something new on the exchange capital markets. See, because you're saying, we are the old school people, right? We have an old mindset. So when you ask somebody, a kid or a young person, how we view the stock market, how we use a bank, he might give a totally different picture of what you think is required. So this is one of the ways we are trying to get viewpoints also from people, and we have already initiated that, both the platforms, and we are seeing a good attraction also. So this is one way we are trying to get in more absolutely raw ideas, fresh ideas, which has got nothing to do with the market. So this is one way of we think we want to collaborate. We're also talking, in other words, we are also talking to a lot of banks. So the banks and exchanges do a lot of automation themselves, but that is more under the tech part of it, because each bank, maybe any of these branches, you want to, for example, any of the settlement related work. Or today we are doing auto payout of mutual funds also, like ASBA started. Now all that is nothing but collaborating between the banks and the exchanges have started. That's why if you want to pay off your money, like you are paying an IPO, you pay it in the bank, the exchange gets it to the clearing house. So his bank account is also with the banks. He does not pay off only when your the bank guarantees to us that the money is locked for you to be taken out, and then when your due date comes, if the shares are allocated to you, the money the bank will. Now this is like, now this, unless the bank and the exchanges collaborate. Similarly, we collaborate with the RTS. So there's a lot of automation happening wherever this money exchange is going to happen or the business as flow is happening. So this collaboration is already happening. So it is nothing new over here. What I'm talking about, trying from getting a collaborating with the idea itself. Like, can somebody comes up with a different idea of how they want to do this business, how they want to do a different service they want from the thing. So that is where I'm saying getting fresh ideas and then automating that. Right now.
Okay, I got it, Mr. Tawadia. Let me begin. This important round of questions, and the thought I will come. Is specifically about what next. And when I come to you, Mr. Shinawala, my question is, what do you see now? We already discussed the benefits of automation. We already discussed how are you choosing the automation. So if I ask you, what next in automation for your bank in next 2 to 3 years? Which part will be? I'm sure there are a lot of parts that are already automated, but which are the other parts that you think will be completely automated in your bank?
See, I'll pick up one example, Amol. Some years back, there was all of a sudden a certain rush towards AML and sanctions and regulatory compliances on banks, and there was an extra onus put on the banks to ensure that the transaction processing is not only within the regulatory requirement of the central bank, but also various other regulatory agencies in terms of monitoring cross-border flows, transactions, sanction filtering, and others. As a result of which, all the banks added up huge workforce to start monitoring these transactions. Now the maturity has set in, and over the last year and a half too, we see a lot of digitized tool and automated tools being deployed to keep monitoring these transactions. And as we see, the AI tools are now maturing, and over a period of time have matured to such an extent that they are almost, I wouldn't say completely, because they will never be able to replace humans, but they come to at least about 90 to 93% of accuracy of taking decisions based on the alerts raised, and balance 6-7% you still need some senior matured professionals in that area to take that twice call. So that's one area where at least from last 1 year or 1.5, 2 years, I've seen a huge shift and transformation in terms of back-end monitoring of transactions for fraud or for sanctions or other reasons. And that area will continue to grow, and AI tools around that area will continue to develop. Other basic things like payments and all of which I mentioned earlier, has already banks and financial institutions have covered a long strides in that. Now the next phase would be what we have left out, the decision making process where humans are involved. That also would be slowly over a period of time. Machines will try to cope up to the extent possible. I'll again repeat, never be 100, but as near to human decisioning we can get to would be the target to go through. But one other interesting factor, and something which we all should keep in mind, and that's my own personal concept, is that for countries like India, China, where we've got so much labor force, at times the biggest challenge comes to us as leaders or as institutions which invest is the cost of investing in a new technology vis-a-vis the labor available to do it. It becomes all the more pertinent for countries like in Europe or in America to look at end-to-end digitization, because the cost of labor is pretty high. For Indian banking and for Indian banks and other financial institutions, the biggest challenge we have is the payback or the ROI on the investments which we make. And as you would be aware, most of us, in the technology world, whether we are CEOs or CIOs, like kids to the candy store, we get a lot of flavors. We got an orange one, we got a yellow one, we got a blue one, and each one of them do come with cost. And believe me, in my experience of last 5-6 years, everything is not relevant to you, but there's a lot of peer pressure. Oh, that bank or that institute has put this, we should try it. And it comes without even understanding whether the applicability of that that application of the tool and how much benefit your organization would derive from it. So one of the important things in my experience over the last few years is we got to look at the applicability and the suitability of the solution which is being proposed to your organization. Because an organization does not run only on systems and platforms. It's got its own processes, it's got its own internal control standards, and which varies from organization to an organization. So these are some nuances which at least we need to keep in mind. But the end goal, as I mentioned, is slowly the machines are now entering into areas where we thought that human decisioning is the key and it can't take on.
Right. I think valid points, Mr. Tinawala. And, my second question was actually part of this. So, Mr. Agarwal, taking some cues from, Mr. Tinawala, machines are taking, some important decisions. My question to you is, how do you actually measure the quality of the automation, quality of the result by adopting, after adopting the digital and going for an automation?
So any automation exercise or any investments when we talked about ROI, we'll always, any good exercise will always define a, outcome-based approach. It's very important that whenever you take, any approach to transformation, to automation, to implementing a new system, you need to be able to clearly spell your business outcome of that. And if you're able to do that right up the journey before you take up the automation, I think the measurement becomes fairly simple. Now, most of the organizations where, the objectives become like, oh, I need to increase customer service, right? Or I need to increase NPS, which for me still is a very broad-based criteria. You need to be able to define a very, very granular, what we call as a SMART goals criteria. And they are the ones which are difficult and tough to define. If you say in transaction, whenever we do a high throughput transaction banking, we measure it transaction per second or transaction per microsecond in terms of what machine can do. And that's where we do. Whenever you talk about a AI algorithm, there are measurement matrices which are well established. Similarly, in automation, you need to able to establish a well-defined measurement matrix, whether it is around, turnaround time, first time rights, the usual matrices. But I think we need to go a little bit granular, one step down, define those measurement matrices, and then it becomes easy. What you need to do, and this come by learning, is while you implement the system, a lot of times we don't have methodologies to measure the matrices in our existing systems or in our new systems, and that puts off the automation, and then you can make all the PPTs and your convincing power and your oration power to say whether you achieve something or not. But I think a more scientific way is, if you have a right measurement matrices at a very, very granular level, you are able to well define your KPIs and the outcomes for that. At a high level, I think efficiency, cost of operations, cost per transactions are the usual matrices by which any automation will get measured.
So I will also take the same question with you, Mr. Kumar, because at the banks also, the simple question, okay, if I'm investing this much, how much is the ROI I'm going to get, right? So how do you actually measure the result of the automation or the digitization that you actually do at your bank?
Actually, to say, as you said, in banks like us, there is no cost allocation or cost appropriation or the ROI measurement. As one of our co-panelists says, it is all for our survival, whether we like it or not, we have to do it. But when there is a cost pressure on all of us, then people started doing the cost benefit analysis. This, what do you call it, as automation or digitalization? It is only a journey. We cannot say that we have achieved 100%. Say all banks have started automation, or you can say digitalization of the front office applications, which they have been given to the customers. But of late, as in order to get a seamless integration of the front office and back office, people started talking about integrating the front office, back office, and mid office. And I'm in IT for more than 3 decades. I can only say this is only automation. It is only computerization. The IT sellers have exhausted the word. Now they are talking about digital transformation or the digital technologies. All these are only, you are trying to do things through the system. So I can say this digital transformation is a journey where, whether we like it or not, we have to take. There is so much of the developments taking place in this new technology. If a business has to be competitive, you have to adopt it. One more thing I just wanted to talk about AI and ML is, yes, it has come of age where it has started playing a critical role in the functions of all businesses. But whether we need to implement AI in this particular operation or not is fully depending upon the bank and your nature of business. My bet is that 50% of the work is going to be replaced by when your AI. Yes, if I have to say the country like us, whether we require, yes, there's another challenge which we have to see. But usually management for cost reduction and better productivity output and increasing their bottom line, they will go on. So this is my take on digitalization or the automation.
Mr. Chatterjee, I have seen a lot of partnerships, collaborations that the insurance companies have with e-commerce companies and other, partners. Or they used to have only with the banks and, someone else, maybe agents. While doing the automation and integrating, collaborating all this, do you face any challenges, or how do you, resolve it?
See, it's an interesting question because I have found during my interactions, the e-com companies, while we feel that they're way ahead, when compared with BFSI and with regulated industries, I found they have equal challenges, right? And they may have more challenges, on the tech platforms or even the process. See, this has been, whenever you collaborate, and you talked about a new distribution channel that we obtain, right? There are good learnings that you get from both sides when you co-create a solution. And co-create not in the sense of just for a word. We found that when we work together on the product, right, what product to offer, typically insurance companies are very good at risk selection, risk underwriting, asset underwriting. But the consumer side or the customer side of things, right, or customer understanding was far more we found on the e-com side, because they have typically serve the consumer directly, right? Their understanding in terms of the footprint, in terms of behaviors, in terms of a lot of insights they get. And when we brought these two together, so when we said as an OEM we could provide the right product, we could provide the right risk underwriting, we could provide the right price, but there was a lot of insights in terms of the consumer side data that got in and which benefited both the organizations. So I would say co-creation is one thing that is, it was more as there is a challenge, but then we worked around on that. The second is, again, the e-com side, they're used to measuring their responses in TPS, right? And not in all transactions on the insurance side, we were used to those kind of volumes, because insurance, as you say, is a longer duration, especially in general insurance. There are small ticket size policies, sachet policies, as I mentioned, right? Mobile insurance or corona, etc. So this was another learning that how do we manage that as an environment where we could deliver things in terms of transactions per second, in terms of measure the throughput for across the value chain in those kind of things. The third is, I would say, it forces us to again be innovative. Innovative in the sense that just innovation for innovation's sake or tech for tech's sake is of no value, but are we really going the extra mile from a consumer standpoint to create that wow experience, right? And that I agree with what Mohit earlier said, right? High tech and high scale, because while we do that, when there's a very famous this thing that we use internally, that when you have a claim, an insurance claim, do you cry on the shoulder of a Siri or a Google Assistant you need a human shoulder, right? I mean, a human empathy to be seen. So what we have seen is that when we work together, we bring both these elements together and actually create a wow experience for the consumer.
Thanks, Saurabh, and that was really nice. Mr. Dhingra, again, let me gather some important thoughts and maybe get some suggestion out of you. So everybody, when you're talking about the future of automation and how important that particular part is, if you give me like 2-3 suggestions in terms of how BFSI company should approach automation in terms of building the digital environment really good, or make it more scalable.
So the way the bank has looked at this is what we refer to as a bank's operational excellence framework. right? So we built a framework around this, and it was built way back in 2014. And automation is an important pillar of that framework. Now, operational excellence is the way we manage the company. It's a key component of our responsible growth strategy that the company has. Now, if you look at what is operational excellence, right, it is a mindset of continuous improvement. And the beauty of it is that the customer is in the center of it and it never stops. Now, what does that mean, right? So if you take a company, you break the company down into departments, you take the departments down into further sub departments. At the end, you get to an atomic level of you doing work of a certain type for a particular process. Now, when we take our employees and say, guys, if you have to have a continuous improvement mindset for the process that you're working on, what would you do differently if you had to do this all over again? And that continuous improvement mindset has given us great dividends, right? It has, first of all, helped employees automate things that they could not do earlier, right? Of course, we have to give them the guardrails and the tools to do that. It has improved the employee satisfaction because now they don't have to do the manual, tedious kind of work that they had to do earlier, right? So what has happened is that with that whole operational excellence framework, we continuously keep on going through, looking at the work that happens. We look at the skills people are using for that work. We look at automating that work. We look at reskilling the associate, and the whole cycle continues to whatever trajectory and never stops. And I think it goes back to the point that Nitin and Mr. Kumar were also saying, right, that these things should never stop. Like, automation is a mindset that goes on continuously throughout your lifetime. You'll never be able to stop it. It is not a 2-year strategy or a 3-year strategy. It is a continuous process improvement kind of a strategy. And even if you achieve 99.9%, there'll be an opportunity to go to 99.92, 93, so on and so forth. Even if you achieve 100, then you'll have a speed of how you can go even faster. So I think that is how the bank has applied the operational excellence framework, and that has worked very well. I think the key part of what we see is putting the customer lens in the center and putting the employees around it. Both benefit the company, both benefit the customer, both benefit the industry, and that has been a great strategy that has worked out for us.
All right, Mr. Dhingra, very, very meaningful. And let me get some tech perspective here, specifically on how should BFSI companies look at technology going ahead in the future. So, Mr. Desai, do you want to add some here in terms of what are the major demands from the BFSI companies that you see are right now, considering the future, considering the new normal world, because they don't want to be what you can say just limited to something else, but they just want to be future ready and drive the future very seamlessly.
With all the banking customers that we have here in India, if I have to speak of my experience, all the banks, one thing I have seen in common, whatever they are planning, it's all long term. So nobody is looking at a short term break fix kind of a solution that this particular area I want to automate. I will just first go ahead and do just that part of it. Everybody is looking at a large scale transformation. And with COVID coming in, I think there was a joke going around on WhatsApp, who really accelerated the adoption of digital workplace or automation? Was it the CIO, or was it this or that, or was it COVID? The answer was clearly COVID. So with that coming in, I think that has further accelerated this initiative. And I think most of the banks and BFSI companies, they are on this journey already as we speak. And they are looking at they're looking across multiple areas. It's not just having a very advanced technological setup. They are looking at a viewpoint from what would be the next generation customer experience, what would be the next generation employee experience, how can I automatically monitor risk and the compliances, how can I have a common team across my front office, mid office, and back office, how I can unify all these operations, and how I can have robotics and AI and ML, and I can anticipate rather than react. These are the capabilities that most of the banking customers are looking at. Mr. Ashok Kumar mentioned a very important point: the younger generation. Okay, so how do we give that next generation experience to the new upcoming generation, the millennials and the generations after that? They all are, very mobile savvy. How can I make everything accessible from a mobile phone? rather than logging into a PC and using a browser for interactions. So there are multiple streams across which the banking customers are engaging with different technology vendors. But one common thing that I'm seeing is they're all gunning for a long-term plan, and they are looking at a common platform which binds multiple workflows, can provide visibility across functions, and can provide the next generation user experience, be it for the employees or be it for the customers. And robotics, AI, ML, I think it's all inherent part of the digital workplace transformation. Goes without saying. That's what I would submit.
Thank you. And now I will go to Mr. Patnaik and take his perspective also. So, Mr. Patnaik, now my question is to you. What is the BFSI companies must do? I mean, what should they actually must do in terms of protecting themselves from any security breach?
The first thing and the foremost is gaining the visibility across your hybrid environment, as I mentioned earlier as well. So yes, organizations do have a certain level of visibility, but they do not have a platform where they can see it all together, right? You don't have a unified way of seeing things. You may have different security solution that could segment your networks, but more often, if you dig deep, there could be an overly permissive access which could allow everything, and that you don't need, right? Then that beats the purpose of a kind of a security or a firewall, which essentially allowing everything to access to each other. So essentially, the idea is to understand like who is talking to who, what is talking to what. Adopting a zero trust access on top of a segmentation or a micro segmentation strategy that could significantly help. Because let's face it, segmentation is there, and a lot of customers have also adopted the segmentation strategies. But the technology has also moved on to the other technologies such as the clouds, and the cloud itself is very dynamic, right? You can't identify a workload with the help of IP anymore. You have tags, labels, and there are many other things through which you identify an asset in the cloud. So it becomes a difficult task. So that is where the idea is to have a security policy guardrail which should adopt a zero trust access and also a concept, or could be a least privilege security model, which essentially help them to define the framework and essentially evaluate the current state of security, and also maintaining the policy based approach. Because let's face it, the technologies and the networks are growing, and your compliances needs to be up to date, and that is something which can be done with the help of automation. And relying on the manual thing would be difficult task, because it will pretty much slow down the process and it won't help on the larger scales. So on a very good note, automation is not a one-stop shop where you just buy some tool and do it as it goes, but it essentially a journey which begins from visibility, uncovering the risk, fixing those risks, understanding your risk habitat, defining a policy guardrails, and keep on continuously monitoring on the compliances, doing changes on automatic fashion, and reaching to a stage which typically could be a zero touch automation based on the zero trust approach or the least privilege principles at the same time.
Valid points, Mr. Patnaik, and I think really glad I could get perspective from all of you here. It was truly a diverse panel, and it was a meaningful conversation from my side. I'm so sure that you also enjoyed it. So thank you so much for taking part into ETCFI BFSI Digital Conclave. Thank you so much, Mr. Dhingra, Mr. Tinawala, Mr. Agarwal, Mr. Chatterjee, Mr. Kumar, Mr. Desai, Mr. Patnaik, and again, Mr. Tavadia. Thank you so much, that you took part into this conversation.
Thanks, Amol. Thank you for having us.
Hey, thanks. Thanks, Amol. Thank you.